All right, so you should all have a little character and this should pop up. So I'm gonna share my screen, but you should also see these things, these changes happening on your screen. So love to start with just a fun little question, just to make sure that everyone's quiz functionality is working. So how's everyone feeling today? It's nighttime for me, it's 10 p.m. So also feel free to share how you're feeling tonight. But you should be able to click an answer, and it looks like we did get everyone in. And so let's see, average response is 9. That's better than earlier today. The average response was 8, so people are feeling pretty good, except one person. So sorry to hear that to the one person. All right, but seems like people's technology is working, so let's get started. We've got 45 questions, and so we're going to go through them pretty quickly. Each question has 45 seconds, but if we can answer them as quickly as we can, that the faster we can go through. And because, as you can see, in a second, you can see when people have voted. Once all the votes are in, or once all the answers are in, I'm just going to keep moving on to the next question. Okay, so these are going to be done in order of the book, in order of the 5 main chapters. So the first one is about your personal monopoly. So question number 1. Around 367 million domains were registered in ... the past decade, the last 5 years, 2020, or Q1 2021. So you're going to click whichever one you think, and then again, you can see the timer up here. But again, since we have around 7 people playing right now, once we get all 7 votes in, we're just going to move on to the next question. So we've got one more person. If you can get your vote in. There we go. So moving on to question number 2. With respect to content, how should we, at least according to Doing Content Right, how should we interpret saturation? Is saturation the presence of an existing number of players, the existing size of those players, the likelihood that you can out-innovate existing players, or the lack of existing players in a space? How should we interpret saturation? All right, question number 3. The internet has reshaped which quote unquote content mechanics, right? So the ability to put content online, the ability to distribute to larger audiences, the ability to distribute to more niche audiences, or all of the above. I will say some of these are easier than others, so don't overthink them. Some of them will be giveaways for the most part. Some of them will be a little harder. So we've got everyone's answers in. Question 4, what products succeed today? Products that have no competition, products that are pretty good at everything, products that are the best at one thing that people care about, or products that have been around the longest. All right, you guys are fast. We're gonna get through this real quick. Question 5, you wanna find a niche, but niche can be viewed in a couple different ways. At least according to Doing Content Right, you are looking to identify your what. Is it your niche topic, your niche positioning, your niche industry, or your niche audience? All right, awesome. Question 6, people tend to focus too much on their blank instead of their blank. Now this one's always a little, I think I just need to restructure the question, but hopefully you'll get it. People tend to focus too much on their blank instead of their blank. So people tend to focus too much on their when for their content instead of their what, or people tend to focus too much on their what instead of their how. You can kind of go down the line through those iterations. People tend to focus too much on blank and not enough on blank. All right. Question 7, with content, many people worry about market risk, aka whether there are people that care about your particular product or your topic, but they often forget, at least according to DCR, they often forget about what other type of risk when it comes to content. Is it channel risk, financial risk, competitive risk, or founder risk? All right, question number 10, or sorry, 8, I don't know why I thought we were on 10, is in the next section about building your home. Okay, so building your home is a short chapter. There's only a couple questions here, but the first one is to set up your digital home, you'll need several things. You'll need a domain, hosting, things like a blogging platform, an ESP, some form of analytics. Which one of these is hardest to migrate once you've already gotten started? So maybe you could kind of rephrase this as, which one of these is more important to get right at the beginning versus some other things which you can really easily kind of pivot or switch from in the future? Is it your domain, your hosting, your blogging platform, your email service provider, or I have modal software here, I know it's analytics on the last page, but which one of these is the hardest to actually migrate from one thing to another? All right, question 9. Readers tend to be more blank with paid content, but are rarely that same thing with free content. Is it monogamous, engaged, critical, or satisfied? So people tend to be blank with paid content and rarely are that thing with free content.
Can I make a note that there could be 2 possible options here?
Yeah,
we
totally.
could discuss later.
Yeah, as I'll go through the answers, I will say that some of these questions, I think they're obviously formed off of the DCR material, but some of them, I think, they will have kind of gray answers. There is one answer that is technically correct here, at least when I started the question, but I think I know which one you're thinking might also be an answer. So we can definitely discuss all of them. Question 10, which one of these is typically not a reason that someone buys a paid content subscription? Which one of these is not a reason that they buy a paid content subscription? Is it A, that they want to win back their time, B, that they don't have enough content, C, that they want higher quality information, D, that they want to fund a specific type of journalism, or E, that they want to support or fund a specific creator? So which one of these is not? All of these are pretty traditional or classic reasons that people would buy a paid content subscription. Which one of these is not? All right. Question 11, if you gate your content, what is the most important thing? Again, some of these will be partially true, but there's one that I'm looking for, one answer that I'm looking for. What is the most important thing that you should consider if you're gating your content? Is it how much you're planning to charge, how consistently you'll publish, what your distribution vectors are, or what your customer LTV is? Awesome. Question number 12, when people convert their free newsletters to paid, what is the typical conversion rate? So again, this may have changed, but according to the book, when people have a free newsletter and then they decide, look, this is going to start being a paid newsletter, and they give people the option to convert to that paid offering, what is the typical conversion rate? Is it less than 1%, 1 to 3%, 3 to 10%, or more than 10%? We got the penguin thinking, unsure between a couple answers. All right, we got the answer in. Chapter 3, as I said, chapter 2 is really short. So chapter 3 is all about distribution. Good distribution is ... Again, there may be some gray answers here, but there is one that I'm looking for. Good distribution is A, additive, B, a multiplier, C, optional, or D, easy. Okay, question 14. When you're just starting out, as in just starting out with content, your job is to do things that don't, again, this one is potentially one of those giveaways, don't think too hard about it. You should do things that A, don't cost very much, B, require much bandwidth, C, scale, or D, have much competition. In the beginning, you want to do things that don't blank. Got 10 more seconds for, there we go. So in the book, when we get to the distribution section, we talk about this codes framework. What does the D stand for in codes when you're talking about distribution? Is it A, dependability, B, distribution, C, drive, D, determination, or E, none of the above? All right, well, the next question is what part of codes, this should be capitalized, but what part of codes do most people focus too much on? So these are the answers to codes. So this gives away the last answer, or the answer to the last question, but which one of these do people tend to focus too much on? Is it A, cost, B, ownership, C, dependability, D, effort, or E, scalability? So all of these matter, and every channel has a different kind of weighting in terms of some of them are really good at one thing versus another. What is the area that a lot of people kind of optimize for that perhaps isn't serving them as well? Where do they focus too much? All right. 17, what is typically the most underutilized channel type for creators? So you're going to see different types here. There's bedrock, viral, social, syndicate, targeted, and paid. Which one of these is, again, what term did I use here? The most underutilized for creators. So again, similar to the last question, all of these can be useful in different scenarios, but which one tends to be the one where people don't focus nearly enough, but it provides so much value? All right, we got 10 more seconds. There we go. Question 18, why is it important to have a modal in the first place? A reminder, a modal is one of those like triggered, I guess, things that shows up on a page. Sometimes it's a full page, sometimes it's part of a page that asks someone to do something. So why is it important to have a modal in the first place? Is it A, because people will take an action when you ask them to do that? B, you can convert external traffic to own traffic? C, because everyone is doing it, D, which is A and B, or E, which is all of the above? Okie dokes. 19, when you are optimizing for, when you are optimizing your conversion modals that we just talked about, which one of these is not a key suggestion? So all of these, again, there's an element of correctness to all of these, I'll say. But which one of them is not a key suggestion? It's not something that you really, really need to focus on. Is it A, aligning the copy to match the value you're providing? B, removing distractions? C, calming concerns? D, using brand colors? Or E, using social proof? 4 of these are correct. One of them was not actually a key suggestion from the book. Okay, question 20, which channel is quote unquote a no-brainer, in particular because it tends to drive high value subscribers? So some of these may be no-brainers for other reasons, but which one of these is a no-brainer in particular because it tends to drive high value subscribers? Is it giveaways, social media, referral programs, Google Discover, paid ads, influencers, or Hacker News? Which one of these is a no-brainer because it generates high value subscribers? Okay. Question 21, what are the second and third largest search engines? At least, again, according to Doing Content Right, it depends how you label a search engine, but I think there is one correct answer here. So is it A, TikTok and Pinterest, B, Facebook and Pinterest, C, Facebook and Twitter, D, YouTube and Pinterest, or E, YouTube and Bing? The second and third largest search engines. Again, it can depend on how you view a search engine. I did read somewhere, I'm not sure how validated it is because sometimes it's hard to determine how accurate the data is, but I once read that Jiffy was actually the second largest. So ignoring some of that, some of the noise, hopefully you guys got to the right answer there. Question 22, what is the key reason that you shouldn't use Medium as your primary platform for publication? And really you could rearrange this to say not just Medium, but just a platform that I guess is external. So is it because Medium gates articles? Is it because Medium no longer has scale? Is it because you don't control your following? Is it because most big publications have already moved off of Medium? Or is it because Medium actually monetizes your content? They make money off of your content. Which one of these is the reason that you really shouldn't use Medium as your primary place of publication, which means that's where it originates. You can use Medium as a place to distribute potentially, but which one of these is the key reason that you really wouldn't want to start there? Okay. What is not true about publishing on Twitter? So all of these things are for the most part true, except one thing. A, Reddit is massive. Reddit's audience is super critical. Reddit is only for technical topics. Redditors prefer to stay on the platform. Reddit is still a community. Reddit allows you to get specific. Which one of these, for the most part, is not true, with the rest being true? Okay. All right, on to SEO. There's a lot of quick ones here because some of them have the same format, and so we're going to breeze through them. But the first one is, we talked about the codes framework already. There's different kind of weightings on how to evaluate different channels across cost, ownership, dependability, effort, and scalability. Which two aspects of codes explain why SEO in particular can be so impactful and why I'm constantly raving about the channel? Is it ownership and cost, dependability and cost, effort and scalability, ownership and scalability, or dependability and scalability? Awesome. Question 25. We're more than halfway through. What is not one of the 3 keys to the Google algorithm? So there's 3 keys that I've talked about a lot. Which one of these is not one of them? Which one of them do all the ranking factors not really roll up to? So is it A, relevancy, B, length, C, credibility, or D, usability? Which one of these is not the 3 key ways of kind of understanding the Google algorithm? The Google algorithm. Struggling to talk today. Okay, so now we're going to go through, again, a series of questions that has the same format. And the format basically is, what is Google targeting with the following ranking factor? So each ranking factor has a reason that Google uses it in order to determine if something is either credible, relevant, or usable, right? So that actually answers the last question, but those answers are already in. And so the first one, so what is Google targeting when it's looking at the keyword use in the URL? Is it credibility, relevancy, usability, or none of the above? So again, the keyword use in the URL, what is that signaling to Google? All right, so same kind of question, but instead of the keyword use in URL, what does load speed signal to Google? Is it credibility, relevancy, usability, or none of the above? That was a quick one. All right, age of the website. What is that signaling to Google? credibility, relevancy, usability, or none of the above? Age of the website. Okay, SSL. So having a secure website, this is like a site that has SSL, for example, certificate. So what is that signaling to Google? Is it credibility, relevancy, usability, or none of the above? Got one more vote coming in. All right. So now I think this might be the last one for this type of question. Time on site. What is that signaling to Google? Time on site, credibility, relevancy, usability, or none of the above?
I think during one session, you make a note that this could be a couple.
Yeah, that's a good point. This actually, I'll wait till someone answers, or actually most people have answered by now. This is the one question where there is actually two correct answers. So if you guess either of them, you'll get the point. Cool. So I love it. Sounds like you've done the reading. This is the one question where there was actually two correct answers in the back end. All right. Which part of, again, crew, credibility, relevancy, usability matters the most? So you can choose any of the three, or D is it depends on the query. And I did see one more person join us. We are pretty far into the quiz, but you can still join us for fun if you want to. You can go to slideswith.com/half. You can see that up in the right corner, or sorry, upper left corner here. So you can go there and you can still join us, but you'll be joining us partway through. So you probably won't get as many points. Or if you prefer, you can just watch or post in the chat your thoughts. So either one. If you do go to this URL, slideswith.com/half, you should be prompted to choose an emoji, write your name, and then if you do that properly, you should actually pop up down here where you can see everyone else voting. All right, but we have around 12, 13 questions left. So which is not a type of search intent? So search intent, we talked about being very important for ranking articles on Google, content on Google. All of these are types of search intent except one. So is it informational, navigational, instructional, transactional, commercial, or ambiguous? Which one of these is not a type of search intent? All right, next question. So this gives you an indicator that this was one of the types of search intent. What does an ambiguous query mean? What does that really mean, an ambiguous query? Does it mean that the searcher does not know what they're looking for? That the search engine can't reliably determine the person's intent? The search engine does not understand the query? The searcher has multiple intentions with their query, or none of the above? So I think this one is kind of takes a couple seconds for you to read, so I'll be quiet and you guys can reread these. All right, you all got your answers in. Awesome. I did see someone else join. Just as a reminder, you can join us, but we only have around 10 questions left, so you might just enjoy watching and seeing how people do. Question 34 is, which of these is a good indicator that a query is informational? So informational is the type that we're targeting, right? So across all of the different types of queries, that is what we want to see on a SERP, a search engine results page. So which one of these are all types of results other than the typical results that Google will share. Which one of these is a good indicator that we have an informational query? Is it if you see job postings, product reviews, people also ask section, AdWords placements, so ads on the page, or none of the above? All right, that was quick. Hopefully that means everyone got it right. Question 35, why are niche keywords often better than broad keywords? So there's these reasons, is it either A, there is less competition, B, it's easier to get the intent right, C, ranking click-through rate diminishes exponentially, which means that basically the click-through rate for position 1 is exponentially better than position 2 onward. Is it a combination of A and B, or is it all of the above? So why are niche keywords better often, not always, but often better than trying to target broad keywords? Okay, question 36, what percentage of organic clicks does page 2 get? So organic clicks, just as a reminder, when you search something, you can get the typical results, or you can of course get ads. So removing ads from that equation, page 1 gets X number of clicks, page 2 gets X number, page 3, etc. What percentage of organic clicks does all of page 2 get? Is it more than 20%, 10 to 20%, 5 to 10%, 1 to 5%, or less than 1%? Page 2, so rankings number 11 to 20, all of them collectively, what percentage of those organic clicks does it get? This, of course, depends on the query, but generally, we're thinking about the average query. Okay, question 37. Which of these scenarios are you least likely to rank your article on? So, is it a low competition transactional query, a high competition informational query, a medium competition informational query, or are all of these possible with a high enough DA? So just as a reminder, I'm going to reread this question. Which of these scenarios are you the least likely to rank your article on? So I maybe emphasize something there intentionally. All right, everyone's in. Question 38. What is not true about domain authority, or DA? So all of these things are true except one thing, that it represents the age of a website, that it's based upon the number of backlinks to a website, that it's logarithmic in nature, or that it can determine your likelihood of ranking an article. So which of these is not true? All right, moving on, 39, we're almost done. When building links, you want to focus on any links you can get, no follow links, or none of the above. Got around 10 more seconds. Just as a reminder for this question and for future questions, I'm not trying to trick you most of the time. So don't overthink them if you think you have the right answer. Question 40, what does a no follow attribute signal? So on a link, links can have follow attributes, no follow. They can also have other things. What does a no follow attribute signal to Google? Does it mean that the URL does not work? That the site is not lending their credibility to yours? That the article is low quality? That Google should downgrade your DA, or none of the above? So what is the site that has chosen to add this no follow link? What is it trying to say to Google? Which one of these 4 things, or is it none of the above? Awesome. Okay, so the final section is about monetization. I know we didn't go over this section live in the last couple of weeks, but hopefully you'll be able to get some of these right. So in the monetization section, we have another framework. It's called the SWEAT framework that helps you evaluate different monetization approaches, whether it's affiliates or having donations or building your own products. There's several different examples in there, but there's a SWEAT framework for how to think about that. So what does the A stand for in that SWEAT framework? Is it audience, applicability, Amazon, affiliates, or none of the above? Well, that was quick. Hopefully that's an easy one then. 42, if you're setting up a newsletter sponsorship, using blank is best for the advertiser, but using blank is often easiest if you're a new newsletter. Or I could kind of repurpose this and say, one of these is better for the advertiser and one of them is often better for the person running the newsletter. So I guess the person selling the advertisement. So the first one, which one is better for the advertiser? Which one is better for the newsletter selling the advertisement? Got around 10 seconds left. All right, question 43, almost done here. If you're unsure of how to make, if you're unsure of how much to charge, you can use the X cent rule and you can adjust as you go, meaning that you charge advertisers X number of cents per subscriber per send. What is X? Is X 1 cent, 5 cents, 10 cents, or 20 cents? And just to give you, if you're a marketer, something that might help is 1 cent is basically the equivalent of a $10 CPM, 5 cents is equivalent of a $50 CPM, $100 CPM, and then $200 CPM. So if you're unsure where to start, what's a really simple way to just get to a rate that you can change over time? And as a reminder, you can change it over time by seeing based on the demand. If there are tons of people going to buy it, well, that actually means maybe you can raise your rates. If no one's buying it at that rate, then of course you can reduce it. So which one of these is just an easy way to start? 44, if you want to increase the money that you're making through sponsorships, you can ... You can increase your audience size. You can increase your audience value, or I guess you could say the audience positioning or what it's targeting. Adjust the number of placements in your particular newsletter or podcast or whatever content medium. You can find more relevant sponsors. You can do A, B, and C, or you can do all of the above. So if you want to make more money, which of these levers or levers would you pull? Or in the cases of E and F, some combination of them are possible. Okay, last question. What is typically the best driver of price point? Or I should say the biggest, not the best, the biggest driver of price point for information products? Is it the perceived value, the market saturation, the size of your following, or the quality of your product? Which one of these, again, this is one of the cases where a lot of these, actually all of these, will impact the price of an information product. But which one of these has the biggest impact, the most defining impact on the price of an information product? Nice, we did it. We're through 45 questions. Who thinks of this group, before we go through the answers, that they beat the 34 number? Does anyone think they beat 34 in terms of points, the record from this morning? No? No one? See the chat, someone answered. People are saying nope. Caitlin says no. What about you, Pablo? You got some of them. There's some bias here. We'll see. Okay, we'll see. So the first one, I'm going to go through these quickly, but you can stop me. You can go off mute, or I'm watching the chat as well if you have questions, or if you're like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that, or can you explain that a little more? If I don't hear from you, I'm just going to keep going because there are 45 to go through and I don't want to waste everyone's time going super in depth. I will also say when I send out the recording to this, I'll also be sending out this document, which has notes on each one, which should give you a little more context from the book directly on why some of those were the answers. Okay, so the first one, really straightforward. It was Q1 2020. That just shows, damn, there's a lot of content online. Number 2, with respect to content, how should we interpret saturation? Saturation is not the number of players in a space or the lack of players in a space. Saturation really has to do with the likelihood that you can out-innovate existing players, okay? Question 3, the internet has reshaped which content mechanics? If you remember, the question had several different options. It included the ability to reach large audiences, the ability to reach niche audiences. I think there was one other thing, we can actually look at it here. The ability to put content online, so having that democratized. The answer here is all of the above. All right, question number 4, what products succeed today? So products that are the best at one thing that people care about. This talks or speaks to this idea of having a personal monopoly, a differentiator. That's really important. Use the example of Costco throughout the course, but Costco is a great example where they're not trying to do everything for everyone. They found one thing that they're the best at, and in their case, it's something that people care about, which is having low-cost products. You want to find a niche. Your niche can be viewed in different ways, but really what we're looking to identify with content is niche positioning. I gave many examples in the course or in the first review session of companies or content products that started with not niche audiences. You can start with a niche audience, a small audience, or it doesn't have to be big. Costco's another great example where they actually went after a huge, huge group of people, which is, you know, general retail, but you need that niche positioning. If you don't have the niche positioning, you know, as people say, you're not going to make it these days. Number 6, people tend to focus too much on their what and instead of their how. I know this one's a little confusing. I think when I first ran this quiz, some people got this wrong, but basically it's this idea where people focus too much on what they're building and not how it's different, right? So maybe the language could be adjusted a little bit, but that is the answer for this quiz. It's how you're doing things differently. The example I always bring up is people who come to me and they say, Steph, I'm going to write a newsletter about technology. How's it going to do? And I say, I have no idea, because it could be extremely successful, it could be extremely unsuccessful. I have no idea how it's going to do because I don't know how you're doing it differently. It could be amazing. It could literally never get a subscriber. All right, number 7, with content, people worry about market risk, but they often also forget about channel risk. And channel risk is important because even if there's people out there that could care about your thing, do you have the right channels to reach them and to reach them in a way that, you know, is dependable, and if we go through the Coates framework, at the right cost that you need, scalable, etc. So can you find those channels to reach the right people? All right, to set up your home, you will need several different things. The one that tends to be the hardest to migrate off of is your blogging platform. You'll have all of your pages in one place, all of your content in one place. In order to properly migrate that to another platform, that is quite hard. Something like an ESP is much, much easier to migrate. Same thing with analytics. None of this is like crazy hard or easy to migrate. It takes a little bit of time, but I would say that's the one thing where you probably don't, for example, want to start on a medium, which we'll talk about in a future question, but your blogging platform, where your content lives, is the hardest to move. Readers tend to be more monogamous with paid content, but rarely with free content. We probably have all seen this with ourselves. How many free newsletters do you subscribe to? And then how many free newsletters do you subscribe to in the same space? Likely 1, right? Max 2. It's really, really rare that you'll subscribe, for example, to 3 sports newsletters, right, that are paid. But you'll happily subscribe to 5 of them that are free. So we tend to be more monogamous with our paid content, rarely with free content. Which one of these is typically not a reason that people buy paid content subscriptions? So I'll just go back, I think it's down here, and show you what some of the other ones were. So it wasn't that they want to win back. These are reasons that people do it, right? They want to win back their time. They want higher quality information. They want to fund a specific type of journalism. They want to fund specific creators. This one is actually very, very common. But what it typically is not is that they need more content. We've got a lot of content, and so they're not paying more to get more. They're paying more to get better, right? Number 11, if you get your content, this is I think one of the key takeaways from the book, in my opinion, and one of the things that I see a lot of people get wrong, because there is a storyline of like, look, you can bootstrap your own newsletter and it can go super well immediately. If you get your content, just make sure that you know how you're still going to distribute your content, as gating it really takes away those distribution vectors. Number 12, at least according to the research I did when I wrote this, which may have differed now, people who were converting their free newsletters to paid were seeing a typical conversion rate of 3 to 10%, but I would say 10% was on the high end. So if you're likely going to do it, you'll probably see something more in the 3 to 5% range. Good distribution is a multiplier. So if you remember, one of the other options was additive. The reason that the answer is a multiplier and not additive is because both the creation and the distribution are relevant and dependent on one another. If it was additive, you could have a terrible article, let's say 0 points, and your distribution could give you 100 points, and you'd end up at 100. But we know that if you write an absolutely terrible article and you market the hell out of it, well, you're still going to be at 0, right? It's not an additive function. They both need to be good. But what's amazing about it being a multiplier is that you do have great content, or even good content, that multiplier can really, really, really accelerate how you do. And I think in here, you can see this very, very simple diagram of what I mean, of this multiplicative nature of distribution. All right, when you're just starting out, your job is to do things that don't scale. This is an easy one if you live in startup land like I do. Number 15, what does the D in code stand for? Dependability. How dependable is your traffic? If you show up tomorrow, are you going to know what you're going to get from this platform? How about in 1 month? How about in 1 year? Dependability is really important. What part of codes, in my opinion, do people focus too much on? And it's effort. And what I mean by that is they try, maybe even subconsciously, to look for channels that are very, very low effort. And then they forget that 6 months, a year down the line, 2 years down the line, they're still going to be on this treadmill of doing things that are in theory low effort, but still some effort, instead of investing in something that's more high effort today, that's really, really scalable and dependable in the future.
Can I make a question here?
Yes, of
on
course.
the effort? So I also thought of the effort bit of the framework as the amount of effort a creator might put into actually crafting the article or the content itself. Because sometimes you think, oh yeah, this article, this piece needs to be perfect, so it's actually ready to get distributed. So I think I also thought of this part of the framework that way.
That's interesting. So one thing just to keep in mind is, at least the way the framework is intentioned is, I think if you were to ask this question and you were including creation, then effort would be really important, and people absolutely shouldn't not focus on it. But at least for the codes framework, it's mostly used to evaluate different types of distribution channels. So once the content is already created, each of these channels kind of has different attributes. Some of them are high cost, some of them are low cost, some of them are really dependable, some of them are high ownership, some of them you don't own anything and are completely at the whim of an algorithm. And so I love that you called out effort is really, really important when it comes to the creation of content. But for the codes framework, it mostly is just like the attributes of those particular channels.
And what about, for instance, YouTube, that it's relatively easy to start a YouTube channel, but editing and actually producing the content is quite complicated.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say that is something that, yes, the effort of almost like, imagine like you have a newsletter and then you're trying to, yes, like syndicate the content in some way on YouTube. I would bake, it's a great point, that into the effort it takes to run on that platform, right? So YouTube, I would actually say, is a high effort channel, but similar to something like Google, in actually creating some of that content, it ends up being worth it, even if you have to create more content or almost like repurpose content in order to utilize that channel. YouTube fits in that bedrock bucket. Anything in that bedrock bucket, which I think is the answer to one of the next questions, is I think what people don't focus on enough, right? So actually, to your point, the effort is baked into not just the channel, but yes, in order to create the content for that channel, if it's not already created. So that's a great point. All right. What is typically the most underutilized channel type for creators? The answer is Bedrock. And just as I was thinking there, something I want to point out is, we've talked so much about the democratization of putting content online, and certain channels are more democratized than others. I think we'd all admit that writing a tweet is easier than creating a podcast, which is easier than creating a YouTube video. And the further along you go in that effort spectrum, you're also benefiting from that friction in a way. If you can get past that friction, that's stopping other people from participating in that place, right? So even though YouTube is very, very competitive, I would actually say it's less competitive than something like Twitter, right? And so again, if you can get past some of that friction, which is why I think people focus too much on something that's low effort, if you can get past that, you actually benefit from the friction that's being applied to other people. All right, number 18, why is it important to have a modal in the first place? So the answer was A and B. And so I think, I can't remember if this one's actually, yes, it should be in here. So these were the potential things. So when you ask someone to do things, they're actually more likely to do it. I mean, maybe that's not surprising, but people forget that, yes, actually having clear CTAs does increase the number of times that people will take an action. You also, in having a modal, can convert some of that external traffic. Like let's say you hit the mark on Reddit, you're trending on their homepage, you need to convert some of that traffic to owned traffic because you're likely never going to hit the homepage of Reddit ever again or for a long time. What isn't included here is you should never do something just because everyone else is doing it. Again, as I just spoke to, actually sometimes you benefit from not doing what everyone else is doing. So the answer here is A and B. When you're optimizing your conversion modals, which one of these is not a key suggestion? If you remember, there was things like reducing the number of distractions, calming concerns, having social proof. Those are all true. The one that isn't necessarily a key suggestion is brand colors. That's fine to use brand colors, but actually sometimes if you're having a very, very important modal where you're trying to convert people, you may actually want to diverge from your brand colors depending on what they are and have something that's very, that converts better, right? So if your brand colors happen to be like a dull gray, you probably want to use a new color actually for your modals. Which channel is a no-brainer when it comes to driving or because it tends to drive these high value subscribers? It's the referral program. Again, there was lots of other great channels there, but referral programs are great because you're basically leveraging your most active subscribers, your best, most high value subscribers to generate people just like them. What are the second and third largest search engines? The answer here was YouTube and Pinterest. Again, it can depend on what you kind of determine as a search engine, but this was the answer. And again, both of these, anything that's a search engine has elements of bedrock. And so those are channels that often are overlooked. What is the key reason that you shouldn't use Medium as your primary platform? I kind of gave away the answer as I asked this, but it's because you don't control your following. You need that ownership, at least in where your content lives. What is not true about publishing on Reddit? The thing that is not true is that Reddit is only for technical topics. In the book, I share subreddit stats in another tool called Unbaka, which allows you to go and explore the deep hole that is Reddit. And if you do that, you will see that there are many, many, many topics and subreddits that are not purely technical. So huge opportunity for people writing about things in all spaces. What two aspects of codes basically explain why I vouch for SEO and think it's so important, and it's that dependability and scalability. Highly dependable, you know what you're going to get if you invest in it. Highly, highly scalable. It's the biggest search engine in the world. We talked about just how big it is, trillions of searches per year. What is not one of the three keys to the Google algorithm? It's length. Hopefully most of you got that right if you've been reading the SEO section. I just wanted to call this one out though, because a lot of people think that in order to rank for things, they need really, really long articles. Length can help in certain cases, but length is not a key input to the Google algorithm, or at least one of the three important factors. And in fact, I always give this example. Google is trying to give you the best answer. Some cases, that's a really, really long form article. In some cases, it's a number, which is why if you say convert 25 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit, it's going to give you a number and not a long form article. So just remember, Google's not always looking for length. You want the best solution to people's problems. All right, so we'll go through these quickly. What is Google? What is using a keyword in a URL signaling to Google? It's signaling relevancy. It's matching that query to the URL. What is it signaling when you have good load speed? It's signaling that your site is usable. So hopefully some of these are pretty straightforward. The age of a website is signaling to some degree its credibility, right? So if it's been around for longer, Google more likely can trust it than something that was spun up yesterday that has no other indicators of the credibility of that site. SSL is also credibility. It's trusting that this is a secure site that people can access. Time on site, good job for calling this out. This is the one that actually did have two answers. Time on site is both a relevancy and usability metric or signal. Relevancy, why? Because if they get to the page and it doesn't actually relate to the query at hand, well, people are going to bounce. They're not going to spend very much time there. But similarly, even if the content on the site is perfect, but someone reads through it and all of a sudden they're getting ads like thrown in their face, or maybe the site's not loading properly, well, that's not a usable site, and their time on site will reflect that, right? So actually, when it comes to the like suite of different ranking factors, the ones that really are the hardest to gamify and in a way are the most important are the user engagement metrics, because at the end of the day, you can't gamify if someone gets the site and isn't getting value from it, right? So time on site, bounce rate, those are things that Google prioritizes very, very heavily and are very hard to game, although some agencies do try to game them, and they literally hire people to go and like search for something and then scroll and click on a page and then pretend to read it. All right, so this relates to which part of the crew framework matters the most. So if you listen to what I just said, you might think it's usability. I think, again, those user engagement metrics matter a lot, but at the end of the day, it really does depend on the query. If you read the book, I gave a couple examples of, for example, medical queries where credibility is the most important, right? So they really, really do care about not just the domain authority, but the secureness and the kind of prior history of a particular site, right? So if you search like that you have a mole that's grown, they don't want to send you to some random site that it doesn't actually have credibility. So they rank credibility a lot more important there versus if you're looking up some color picker, they don't care if that site has that much credibility as long as it gets you the right answer, because the stakes are higher in the former case. So it really does depend on the query, but I will say that all three of them matter. I use this example in the book and in the live sessions. If you have amazing, credibility and relevancy, but not good usability or some other mixture of that, it's unlikely that you're going to do very well. Which is not a type of search intent. Instructional, this intentionally was meant to trick you because the one that we're looking for is informational. What does ambiguous query, what does an ambiguous query mean? It really means that the search engine can't reliably determine the person's intent, not because it doesn't have an idea of the different possibilities, but because there are many different people searching this thing with different types of intent. And what's also important here is that some of the other potential answers were things like the searcher doesn't know what they're looking for. The searcher knows what they're looking for. Each individual searcher has a clear intent. One person does not have ambiguous intent. The amalgamation of those people has ambiguous intent, which is why ambiguous intent relates to the search engine and not the searcher. All right, 34, which of these is a good indicator that a query is informational? It's the people also ask section, because informational queries can really be iterated on to turn into like who, what, when, where, why questions. And this is a good example of similar questions that the person is looking for. Why are niche keywords often better than broad keywords? So in this case, it's all of the above. And if I just go into here, keywords, so it's that there is on average less competition, but it's also easier to get intent right. The broader the keyword, the more likely that it goes into that ambiguous territory. Example is Apple, huge keyword, millions of searches per month. That's an ambiguous, kind of ambiguous query. Ranking CTR does diminish exponentially, which relates to the next question that we'll get to. So it's all of the above here. And if we go to that next question, page 2, which is rankings 11 to 20, get 1 to 5% of organic clicks. So you can imagine that just shows you that all of those rankings get so few distributed across that whole bunch. And it just really shows that ranking in the top 1 to 3 is just a game changer compared to ranking anywhere else on the SERP. Which of these scenarios are you least likely to rank your article on? Hopefully you guys got this if you followed the importance of intent. The answer is a low competition transactional query. If you remember, the other options here were these other forms of informational queries. So you're least likely to rank on a transactional query because if you're ranking an article, and that's why I tried to emphasize that when I asked the question, if you're ranking an article, you're not going to rank on a transactional query. And so, oops, wrong slide. So that was the answer. What is not true about domain authority? So the one that's not true, and this one was a little bit tricky. I know I said I wouldn't throw any tricks out there, but it does not represent the age of a site. The age of a site and domain authority are two ranking factors that lend to the credibility of a site, but domain authority on its own has nothing to do, or it may be correlated, but it is not representative of the age of a site. A site that has just spun up in the last 6 months can have a much higher domain authority than a site that's been around for 6 years. So they're both credibility signals, but they are not interrelated, if that makes sense. When building links, you want to focus on follow links. This one was not a trick. This is important though. If you're building links, don't go and try to build a bunch of them with no follow, because that doesn't actually help your domain authority or help signal to Google that you're important. As a reminder, these are no follow links are typically on user-generated content sites, because the site is basically saying, hey Google, I know you see this link here, but this was, this is not where we want to actually lend our credibility. And again, they tend to be on user-generated content sites because, as an example, something like Dribbble with tons of users is basically like, we can't actually validate what we want to lend our credibility to. And so you want to focus on follow links. So this is exactly what I just said. A no follow attribute is a site basically saying, hey Google, I know you see this here, but this is not a micro vote for the site. We are not lending our credibility to this link. What does the A in SWET stand for? It stands for audience. Just as a reminder, let me see if I have it in here. Oops. SWET. Do I not have it in here? Oh, here we go. Oh, I don't actually have a note on this, but if you go to the monetization section, you'll see, again, these different attributes help you determine perhaps where you should be focusing your time in monetization. 42, the answer is the best for advertisers is cost per click. The best for the actual newsletter often is cost per send. Why is this? Because cost per click gets you closest to the action that the advertiser actually wants people to take, right? So you're sending an email, people are opening the email, and then some percentage of those people are clicking to the product through the advertisement. That's the best for the advertiser because they're only paying for actions that people are actually taking. But if you're a newsletter and you don't really care about, I'm not saying I encourage this, but if you really don't care so much about, am I providing the most value for my advertiser versus do I just want to get paid, right? Do I just want to get paid according to my audience size, especially if you're early on, then cost per send is the furthest away from that, right? You're not guaranteeing any performance other than the fact that you're sending this email to X number of people. Now, what a lot of newsletters do is the middle ground, which is CPO, cost per open. So it's not guaranteeing clicks, but it is also guaranteeing some action, some engagement. It's getting people part of the way there. So you can determine what you want to do there, but just a note to understand that mentality. 43, if you're unsure of how much to charge, it's the 5-cent rule, which again is that $50 CPM, which you can adjust based on supply and demand, right? You're in a marketplace. 44, if you want to increase the dollars you make through sponsorships, you can, and it was all of the above. So just as a reminder, you can increase your audience size. That's one lever you can pull. You can increase the audience value. So for example, maybe you're targeting general tech and actually you realize you don't even need to increase your audience size, but maybe I just target CIOs instead, and those are much higher value for certain advertisers. You can adjust the number of placements. Instead of just having one, you could have one at the top of your email and 3 at the bottom, and probably double the amount that you make without actually having to send any more emails or grow your audience size. Or you can also just find more relevant sponsors. So a sponsor that would just get more value from you, and at the end of the day, if they can get more value, you can charge more. And then the final question was, what is typically the biggest driver of price point for information products? It is perceived value. Again, I will just quickly remind you of what the other potential answers were here. And it was market saturation, size of your following, quality of the product. All of those matter, but perceived value matters the most because that sets the basic range of what you can even operate within. The example I always give, which I actually messed up myself, is people will happily spend $300 for a course, but no way they would spend more than $30 for a book, just as an example. Not everyone, but generally the perceived value of certain product categories really, really gears what you're able to charge. And then the other example I always give is just myself, and I think most people's resistance to pay more than 99 cents for an iPhone app, no matter how much value it gives us. So again, it's that perceived value, that habitual reaction to what we're used to paying for something. So keep that in mind, because if you're pricing something, again, even just changing the framing of it can 10x what people are willing to pay for it without you even having to grow your audience or any of these these other things. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to go through, share some of the scores. So you're going to start seeing them pop up. So a couple people got 21. Caitlin, you got 26. Rima, you got 27. Fred, you got third place with 30 points. That's great. As I mentioned, the top one in the other group was 34. So let's see if someone can beat that. We've got Pablo, you got 34. And then looks like Matt got 37. So congrats, Matt, on getting the most. 37 was the most of probably around 30 plus people. So that's awesome. Congrats. What I'm going to ask you to do in order to claim your $100 is just email me at hello@stephsmith.io, and I'm sending this in the chat, and then we will get that sorted. Thank you to everyone who participated. We have a fun little final question here, which is just how is everyone feeling? So feel free to answer that, and love the support in the chat, congratulating Matt. We had the same kind of support in the prior session, which is always nice to see. And again, thank you everyone for participating here. If you haven't answered this yet, let's just see how people are feeling. Pretty good. We don't see or actually it didn't show in the last section, but basically I don't think we had anyone at that 5 level. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. As I said, we'll send out the quiz later. Hopefully this helped you learn something new or cement what you've already learned. I loved that it seemed like at least a few of you have like gone through and maybe even studied the material, which is so rewarding for me as a creator to see that it's actually, you know, impacting you guys in some way. If you have any questions, you can either reach out to me at that same email, DM me on Twitter, or as I've mentioned in the email that I sent out earlier today, there is an AMA next week on Monday. You can either show up live or participate asynchronously. So if you go to the link in the email, I can even just pull it up here. It is this. So I'll just send the link if anyone's curious. If you go here and you either, again, you can attend live, which is again on Monday, or in the event description, there is a document. And in this document, you can add your questions. And then finally, there is also a podcast session next week, which is based on the new chapter, which is coming. So also, just in case people are curious, send this link, and then that's it. So again, Matt, make sure you definitely reach out so that we can reward you for your great work. And then I guess thanks so much everyone for joining. I had a lot of fun here, and yeah, I appreciate everyone's support. So have a great night or day wherever you are, and happy holidays. See you guys.